Hi, welcome back to Rohrich Podcasts. I'm Rod Rohrich, and the goal of our podcast on YouTube is to help you become a better you. And I love having people on that are true role models and people that not only that I like, that millions of people like and really admire. And I can't think of anybody better today than Troy Aikman, who, of course, and he needs no introduction. You know, he's a three-time winner of the Super Bowl, MVP. He's a Hall of Famer, sports broadcaster, and so much more. Serial entrepreneur. We're going to talk about that as well. And of course, the most important thing is he's the father of two beautiful young daughters, and he rocks. So, Troy, welcome. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you, Doc. Yeah. It's really an honor to be on your podcast with you.
Well, that's great. So, tell me a little bit about Troy Aikman. I mean, a lot of people know about the public Troy Aikman, but, you know, you grew up in Henrietta, Oklahoma. I mean, you know, I grew up in a small place. How big is Henrietta? Because I grew up in North Dakota, and where I grew up, it was 200 people. How big was Henrietta?
Well, it's a lot bigger than that. Yeah, it's around 6,000 people is what it is, and I moved there when I was in 8th grade. You know, I feel like I got the best of both worlds. I grew up in a city where I rode my bike everywhere in Cerritos, California, until the age of 12, and then I moved to a farm, an actual working farm, 7 miles outside of town on dirt roads, when we moved to Oklahoma at the age of 12. So I've got to experience a lot of things, and I will say the time in Oklahoma really were my formative years, and they were the years that really shaped, I think, the things that I believe and who and what I am today.
Yeah, I mean, it is amazing. I mean, you excelled in baseball and football, and then how did you get to typing awards? That was pretty amazing.
You know, I don't know if it's genetics or not, but my mom was a typesetter for the newspaper, and really? I decided to take typing as a sophomore. I think just to avoid chemistry.
Now, be careful.
And I excelled at it. It came very easy for me. And then I wound up taking it my junior year because all the best looking girls were in typing too. And I ended up entering, it was a regional contest, and I won. I was the only guy in the contest. And that's followed me probably. People probably know more about that than they do that I actually won a Super Bowl. I mean, it's gone everywhere I've gone. So
no, it's funny. I do see that a lot. But you did touch on something that, you know, doing something you like to do, and obviously, I mean, you epitomize that. I mean, you're not only great at football, but you lived and breathed football. When you were the quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys, I mean, that emanated from you. Every time we saw you play, and this was in and out of the stadium, it was amazing. So tell us, how did that happen? From Henrietta to Oklahoma to UCLA?
Yeah. Well, I will say that for as far back as I can remember, I had always wanted to be a professional athlete. There was never a time in my life where I thought of being anything else. And my father would ask me from time to time, he'd say, "Son, what do you want to be when you grow up?" And I said, "Well, I want to be a professional athlete." And he'd always follow it up with, you know, well, you can be anything you want in life as long as you're willing to put in the time and the work. And that kind of was the mantra of my childhood. And when we moved to Oklahoma, because I grew up in a fierce baseball community in Cerritos. A number of my friends that I knew back then, they went on to play collegiately, and some went on to play in the big leagues. And I would have probably gone baseball had I stayed in California. But when we moved to Oklahoma, I really thought my athletic dreams had ended, quite honestly, really? Because I just felt that being in a small town, I wasn't going to get noticed, and you know, no one was going to get a chance to really watch me play. But as luck would have it, when I was a sophomore, we had a senior on our team who was being recruited by some of the big colleges, and that's when I first got noticed. And so I started being watched as a sophomore in high school, and it's allowed me now to believe that it really doesn't matter where you are. If you're talented and you work hard and you stay confident and faithful, then I think people will discover you. But that's really was my start. And you know, you obviously have hardships, and we all do. You do as what you did as and have as well. And I think that, people, whether they want to be a surgeon or they want to be a professional athlete or whatever it is that they want to be, usually the people that they look to, they feel that everything's come easy for them. And as we all know, everyone in life goes through tough times. We all have setbacks. And then it's really how you handle those as to whether or not you're going to continue to move forward and achieve the things that you hope to.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, failure breeds success, and if you haven't failed, you're not going to succeed. So that's fascinating. So who was your mentor in high school? I mean, obviously you talk about your mom a lot and your dad, but beyond that, who helped jettison you to the next level in football? And tell us about how that happened, and because people want to hear that.
Yeah, I think as far as my drive and determination and discipline, I think that, well, I know it. I don't think I know it came really from my father. My father was a strict disciplinarian. He treated me as a grown man from the time I was about 6 years old. I had chores from the time we moved to Oklahoma, and I would play in a doubleheader and get home about midnight, and if there was hay on the ground in the fields and it was expected to rain, then I would be out in the fields until sunup, making sure that we got the hay in. And so there was just that was just the way that things were in the house that I grew up in. And so it carried over into my professional life. And as I've said many times, you give up a lot when you're raised like that. You give up some childhood along the way. So I do credit my father in that sense, but the role models that I had were mostly my coaches. There were some teachers, but I had great coaching, Doc. I mean, it's really blessed in that sense. From the time I began, I could go
even in Henrietta, you had great coaches.
And even back in Cerritos, California, from the time I began playing athletics at the age of 8 years old, the entire way through. And even in my collegiate career and professional career, I just have had excellent coaches, and those coaches are the ones that I guess gave me the confidence and the push to make me feel like, hey, maybe this dream of mine of being a professional athlete, maybe it's more than just a dream. I mean, maybe this is something that can actually be realized, and no one along the way ever gave me doubt. My parents never did. They never said. The tendency when someone has high dreams, because not many kids who begin athletics get a chance to go on and play for a living. But my parents never said, you might want to focus on something else, because that's probably not going to happen. And nobody ever did. Instead, it was always, hey, if you keep progressing and keep putting in the time and keep working, the sky's the limit. And so I think in a lot of ways, athletics became my outlet. As I mentioned, I always thought it would be baseball. Even when I moved to Oklahoma, It wasn't until about my junior year of high school that I realized we didn't have a real good baseball team. We weren't very competitive. We didn't have a real good football team for that matter, but most everyone was focused on football. And I just felt that I was getting a lot more attention as a quarterback than I was as a baseball player. So the decision was kind of made for me, although I did have an opportunity to sign professionally out of high school if that had been the route that I wanted to go, baseball. But I thought football was going to be my best avenue.
Well, thank God it was. Otherwise, we wouldn't have all the Super Bowls in Dallas. We're still waiting since you had the last one. But so, Troy, that's amazing. I grew up on a farm and a ranch too, and I had the same. I'm German Russian, so I had the same disciplinarian. We would get up at 5 a.m. before we went to school, and you had to milk the cows and things like that. But that imprints on you, and it kind of makes you who you are. And isn't that amazing? And I've tried to instill that in my kids by taking them back, but it's not the same.
It's not the same. It's such a great point that I do wrestle with that a little bit, in that because I feel so blessed to have gotten to experience both worlds, and having learned so much being on a farm and with those chores. As you mentioned, I was doing the same thing, feeding the pigs and the chickens in the mornings before school, and all that goes with that I feel like I've withheld something from my girls that would be a really good experience for them, and something that they could learn from it's not the same in Henrietta, but that's not the same. That's not to say there's not other small communities across the country in rural America that would offer a lot of the same things that I experienced. And I have gotten them out in the country. They've done some of those types of things, but it obviously was not a main part of their lives. And I think that, who knows, maybe they'll experience that as they get out of college and start families of their own. But I think for those people who have never experienced rural America, I do think they've missed out on some things.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it really, was imprinting for me of who and what I am. And obviously, so I didn't know that about you either. And it's hard, but everybody imprints in a different way. So what advice would you have for, I mean, I'm sure you tell this to your daughters all the time. And you've been, world-class quarterback, now sportscaster, serial entrepreneur, and then we're going to talk about 8 in a little bit. So Troy, what drives you today? I mean, I think it's got to be your love of succeeding and doing the things you like. But what really drives you? Because people, see and talk about you and saying, "Why? He's amazing. He looks like he did when he won the Super Bowl." So what? I said, so what drives Troy Aikman today?
Yeah, it's such a simple question and such a complex answer. And I don't know that I have a great answer for you. I know that, first of all, I've always been mindful of my health and well-being. I've always worked out, even after I retired. I had buddies that I played college ball with that live here in Dallas, and they'd always tease me and say, "Well, wait till you get done playing professional football. You're gonna be fat like the rest of us," I said, well, so I've always worked out, and then the COVID stuff really kind of kicked me into an entirely different gear. I just said people are going to go one of two ways, and I just decided that I was going to come out of COVID in the best shape I could possibly be in, and it's put me on this trajectory that I've continued to stay on, and it's the best I've ever felt. I'm 56 years old, so that's on a personal level. Professionally, I don't know. And I will admit to this. I used to think that contentment was a 4-letter word, and people have proven to me that that's not the case. One of whom is Jimmy Johnson, who found out somewhat early in his life, when he was in his 50s, that what made him happy was being in the Florida Keys fishing, and so that's what he's gone and done. Right. I've always kind of been one who just has felt like there's another mountain to climb and there's more to conquer. But I will say that I am finding more and more contentment in my own life and asking myself those questions as to, what makes me happiest and how do I go about acquiring that or being in that environment as much as possible. So, but I like the challenge, and you mentioned the 8 beer. That's been the new frontier for me, and I will say I was, even before 8 beer came along, I would always say, yeah, I was a professional quarterback and proud of my career, and then I've gone into broadcasting, and I'm proud, and I'm still in it, of course, but I'm proud of the career that I've had there. But I still feel like there's something left. There's something that's on the horizon for me, and I don't know what that is. Then 8 beer came along, and I will still say that even beyond 8, I still think there's something left. I don't know what that is. There was a time I thought it might be running a football team in the NFL and being a general manager. Right. I think that's less likely now, but I don't know what that yet is, and I never close opportunities and options. So time will tell.
Yeah, I like that, and I think what Troy Aikman is saying is that. Living in the comfort zone is good for a while, but you've got to challenge yourself every day. And it's amazing. It's hard to challenge yourself when you finish with 3 Super Bowl rings and what's next, Hall of Famer, and then you did it in the broadcast booth. I must say, when I saw you the first time in the broadcast, I said, can Troy Aikman really do that? And yet, you're the best of the best. It's unbelievable. I'm going, wow, but you know what? Because you love it, you love the game, and that's it shows. You got to love what you do. And I can tell you, when I see you're very unbiased, and I think I like that, and it's phenomenal. And and also now 8. Let's talk about 8. How did you get from that to 8 beer?
Well, first, I worked at a distributorship when I was in college. When I was transferring from the University of Oklahoma to UCLA, I worked at a distributorship in Tulsa, and that was my first exposure to the beer industry. I learned a lot in the time that I was there. I worked on the trucks, and then I went around with the owner and I called on accounts, and so I got to kind of experience both sides of it. And then, of course, I went to college. When I came back to Dallas and signed with the Cowboys, shortly thereafter, I became very close friends with the Andrews family, who has Andrews Distributing. And so I've done things with their distributorship over the years at sales meetings and different things that they've asked of me. And then I've also endorsed a brand nationally a couple of different times. So I've had this loose association with the beer business, I feel like, for most of my life, but I never imagined that I would ultimately have my own beer. But I met my now partners through a mutual friend. One of them has had a career in the beer business, and we got to talking, and they asked if it was something that I would ever consider. And I thought, well, I don't know. I mean, let's talk about it. And my partners are really, really smart. And that's rule number one for me. If I get involved with anyone about anything, especially business, then I bet on the people. And so ultimately, that's why I decided to do it. But I wanted to come up with a beer that was, I didn't want to just make a beer for the sake of making it. I wanted to make a beer that, one, complemented my lifestyle. So It had to be a low calorie, low carb beer, but then also one that was different from what's on the market. And that's what we've accomplished. And so people out there, they say, well, how is 8 different? We have no adjuncts in our beer. So we have no added corn, rice, syrup, or sugars. And that's unusual. No other widely available beer can say that. So it truly is I'm not saying it's healthy, but it is a better for you beer. And it's a very clean beer. So it was made for people like we're talking about, Doc. Right. It's for people who are motivated to go out and be their best and want to be able to enjoy those moments with family and friends when times call upon it, and to do it without sacrificing all the work they've put in. And this beer is made for the achievers, the ones who are mindful of their health and wellness, and I'm real proud of how it's turned out.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely amazing. I mean, my son was home recently, and he and his buddies and I got together, and we drank a bunch of 8. It was amazing. And
thank you.
They're pretty critical about beers, the millennials, as you know. So, yeah, I mean, I just think that you got to love what you do what you love, and you also mentioned something which I think is important, is that you never want to be the smartest person in the room. I never want to be, and you surround yourself with with people that really are in the beer business. And now, guess what? Yeah. You are at the top of the top, and that's neat.
Yeah, I found out the hard way. People ask me, what is my philosophy on business, or what's the key to being successful? And the first thing that I say is, or at least for me, I bet on people, because I've been involved in some companies that had great technology or great product, and that wasn't the reason that those ventures failed. It was because we didn't have the people that could execute it. And so now I don't get too caught up in the product, although that's important. And I don't get too caught up in technology, although that, of course, is important. But you've got to have both. And it's just like, to me, my successes have been real simple throughout my career. You surround yourself with really talented, motivated people, and you've got a chance to be successful. And it was the key to my success as an athlete, and with the Cowboys, it's been the key to my success as a broadcaster. I work with Joe Buck and some tremendously talented folks that are the best at their business, at their craft. And it's been the key to those successes that I've had in business. And so that's kind of what I have learned over my career. I think probably, you ask 10 different people, they may have 10 different answers, but somewhere in all of those responses, I think they'd all say that the people make the difference.
Yep. No, I agree. I mean, man, especially when you were the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, your team was, it's still unparalleled. And
I will add also, Doc, that I failed to mention a moment ago, that one of the motivators for me when about 8, and some of the other things that I've gotten involved in, is Roger Staubach is a very special friend of mine. And obviously, he's the greatest Cowboy player there ever has been and will be the greatest quarterback there ever will be in our franchise's history. But he's been a mentor to me. And what I've really admired about Roger, aside from him just being a phenomenal human being, is that he took his playing career and then he went on and had success in a business, in his real estate business that he built, that had really nothing to do with athletics and nothing to do with football. Yeah, he leaned on his notoriety as a quarterback, but yet he built that business, and there wasn't a parallel to that. And I've admired that. I've admired that about people. And so I've always wanted to do something that was outside the realm of football or sports, and just kind of prove that I could do it. And that's the challenge that 8 has presented for me, because even my broadcasting career, of course, I wouldn't still be doing it after 22 years if I couldn't do the job. But I got the job because of my athletic career with the Cowboys.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, and I like you always are looking to the next horizon, you just, because, once you get to the top of the mountain, guess what? You got the view for the next mountain, and it's always higher, right?
That's right.
And most of the time, it's not the end, it's the journey that's the most fun, don't you think?
Yeah.
It's a journey.
I do. I really do. I bet I speak for you in this, that I don't feel like I should say, since I got out of college, I worked some jobs, but since I got out of college, I don't feel like I've worked a day in my life. I really don't. And I can't imagine, knowing how much time we spend at our jobs, I can't imagine waking up and dreading going to work or not enjoying the people you work with or what it is that you do. And man, I put in long hours for broadcasting, and I love it though. I don't find it to be work. I just find it that, yeah, it's time consuming, but I love every part of it.
But that's the key. If you're doing something that's not a job, I feel the same thing about medicine and plastic surgery, because I love what I do. I've never worked a day in my life and you can see it and feel it in people, and I think so few people get to that nirvana in life. It's pretty amazing, isn't it, to me? Because I talk to my friends and they say, I can't wait to retire. I mean, retire to what?
Yeah.
So you got to love what you do what you love, and it emanates. So Troy, what is in wrapping, what's next for Troy Aikman? I mean, you've done it all, and I think you said in the beginning you said, okay, 8 is a good stepping stone. I guess you're looking for the next horizon. So what's next for Troy Aikman?
I'm not real sure what that is as far as for me and in my career. I will say, and I've got time. You mentioned my daughters when we launched this, and they're 20 and 21. They'll be 21 and 22 this summer. And their lives are ahead of them, and they're going through college and figuring out what they want to do with themselves. And I guess for me, a big part of my future as I look down the road is really seeing how their lives progress and the path that they take and what's going to bring them happiness. And so I'm really excited about that part of it for me. I would imagine at some point, I don't know this, but I would imagine at some point I'll be a grandfather, which will be a great time in my life as well. But right now, I will say that we just had our 1-year anniversary with 8. And I'm fully immersed in that. And this is a big year for us in that we have to prove that since we're no longer the new kids on the block, that we can sustain and continue to grow. So I've got my work cut out for me on that front. But there will be something else, I assure you. And in a few years, I'm sure if we visit again, I'll be able to tell you what that is.
You bet. So and is 8 going to go outside of Texas soon, or is it already?
It's only in Texas currently, but we have looked at some other markets, and there's a chance that by year's end, we could be moving into some neighboring states.
Awesome. That's awesome. Well, Troy, thank you so much. I know you're a busy guy and all over the world, and I cannot tell you how much I appreciate it. And you've motivated me. It takes a lot to motivate me, and I love your thoughts, and I really think our viewers will as well. So thank you again so much for joining us, and good luck to you. And I know whatever you do will always turn to gold. Take care.
Thank you, Doc.
Thank you. You bet.
Always enjoy your time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Troy. You bet.